Desk of Zoe Washington, a First Chapter Friday read aloud video and author interview with the Word Nerd and Janae Marks. Today, as you listen, watch for the story quote that will appear on screen. Write it down, word by word, and then follow the instructions given to you by your teacher. Here's a quick shout out to Ms. Valentine's class, 6th graders at Walker Middle School in West Salem, Oregon. Thanks for watching, you guys, and happy reading! Hi, my name is Amanda Zieba. Welcome to my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd, and another First Chapter Friday video. This week I'm going to be reading to you from the Desk of Zoe Washington by Janae Marks. And great news, after I read you Chapter 1, you're totally going to be sucked in. And even better than that is that we're going to listen to an interview I did with Janae Marks and hear all about all the things of this amazing story. Let me read you the back so you know what it's about, and then we will dive into Chapter 1. What does a girl say to the father she's never met, hadn't heard from until this letter arrived on her 12th birthday, and who's in prison for a terrible crime? A crime he says he never committed. Could Marcus really be innocent? Zoe's determined to uncover the truth, even if it means hiding his letters from her mom and stepdad. Everyone else thinks Zoe's worrying about her bakery internship and proving to her parents that she's worthy of auditioning for Food Network's Kid Bake Challenge. But with bakery confections on one part of her mind and Marcus's conviction weighing heavily on the other, this is one recipe Zoe doesn't know how to balance. You guys, I loved this story, and I know that you are going to as well. I loved it even more so after I had a chance to talk with Janae about it. So let's read Chapter 1, and then let's go talk with Janae. Chapter 1. The day I turned 12, I was certain it'd be my favorite birthday yet. But then I got the letter. I just had my dream birthday party at Ari Cakes. Mom's friend Ariana owned the bakery in Beacon Hill, my favorite neighborhood in all of Boston. It had cute brick buildings and townhouses with cobblestone streets. There was a deli with baskets of fresh fruit for sale outside, a chocolate shop, a coffee shop, and a ton of fancy restaurants. And then there was Ari Cakes, with its pretty pale blue awning and a wooden sign above it with the store's name written in white script. Her front window always had lots of cupcakes on display along with fresh flowers. You could smell the sugar before you even walked in. Even though it was pouring rain outside, I felt like the luckiest girl. I'd been in a professional kitchen with my best friends Jasmine and Maya as we baked and decorated chocolate fudge cupcakes. When my parents and I got home, Dad pulled his rain jacket hood on his head and rushed inside with a box of leftover cupcakes. Mom, using an umbrella, carried my gift bags. I hurried behind them and on my way in, grabbed the mail from the mailbox next to our front door. While I kicked off my sneakers in our foyer, I flipped through the envelopes, checking to see if my great-aunt's birthday card had arrived. She usually included money, and I was dying to add an egg separator to my baking supplies. There was a catalog and some junk mail from credit card companies, and then I spotted a plain white envelope with my name, Zoe Washington, and my address handwritten in neat blue print. I glanced at the return address and froze. Massachusetts State Penitentiary was typed on the upper left corner, across from a waving American flag stamp. The name Marcus Johnson was written in that same blue handwriting above the prison's name. It was a letter from my convict father, a man I'd never heard from before. I couldn't believe it. Just like that, my birthday didn't matter anymore. The envelope slipped from my fingers, landing on the floor. My dog, Butternut, ran over and started licking it, but I snatched it up and dropped it onto the table next to the door. Why would Marcus write to me? Why now? I only owned one picture of him, which Grandma had given me since Mom would never approve. It was one of Mom's pictures that Grandma had saved from when Mom and Marcus were high school sweethearts. I'd hidden the picture between the pages of one of my journals. In it, Marcus was at a Boston Celtics game wearing a team sweatshirt and a huge smile. My smile looked like his, which was weird. Someone I never met had the same exact smile as me. And his brown skin matched mine. Mom's skin was a little lighter. Now Marcus was sitting in a prison cell, probably wearing an orange jumpsuit. That's how I imagine people in prison. I bet he didn't smile much there. I picked up the envelope and rubbed my thumb across the seal, but all of a sudden my fingers stopped working and I froze in place. I wanted to read it, but I was also terrified of what it might say. He'd committed a terrible crime. What if he'd written something scary? It was only a piece of paper, but the feeling wouldn't go away. I took a deep breath and started to open the envelope again, but then I heard Mom come down the stairs. I knew it was Mom and not my stepdad, Paul, because she was humming a song, which she did a lot, especially in front of the bathroom mirror when she was putting on makeup. She had a pretty good voice, but she said it always was because of the bathroom acoustics. That was wrong because my stepdad sometimes sang in the shower, and the acoustics didn't stop him from sounding like a dying coyote. I quickly tucked the letter into the pocket on the inside of my rain jacket. It wouldn't be a good idea to show Mom. I was pretty sure she'd take it away without letting me read it. I hoped she couldn't hear how hard my heart was beating. I put the gift bags in your room, she said. Thanks. Did you have fun today? She asked. Your cupcakes came out so pretty. It was amazing, I told Mom. But now I couldn't focus on how amazing it was, not with Marcus's letter taking up so much space in my brain. This today's mail? Mom stared at the foyer table where I'd left the rest of it. Yep, I grabbed it from the mailbox. Thanks. But then her eyebrows scrunched together and her shoulders did what they did when she was stressed. They lifted toward her ears. She smiled at me, but it was a forced smile, like she wasn't actually happy. She picked up the pile of mail, and as she flipped through it, her shoulders slowly returned to their normal position. I thought Aunt Lillian's card might have come, but I didn't see it. I swallowed hard, thinking of the letter that had come. I wondered if I should tell Mom about it, but what if it made her super mad or upset? She didn't like to talk about Marcus. Mom smiled at me for real. It'll come. Anyway, there's one more birthday surprise for you. We're going to order Hawaiian-ish pizza for dinner. I forced myself to smile. Hawaiian-ish was the name I'd given my favorite pizza combo, pineapple and pepperoni instead of ham. Since my mom and stepdad thought it was gross, we usually only got those toppings on half the pie. Sounds great. I cleared my throat. I'm going to go to my room and, put my gifts away. It was a total lie, but that's not what Mom noticed. You're not going to take your jacket off, she said. Marcus's envelope was still in my pocket, right over my heart, which was beating fast. I'll take it off in my room. I walked away before Mom could say anything else. What could Marcus have to say to me? I had to know. And you won't have to wait long if you pick up this book because immediately in chapter 2, you get to read Marcus's letter. And now, let's go talk to the author, Janae Marks. All right, readers, we are in for a huge treat today because we are here with author Janae Marks. Janae, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I am really excited to ask you about this book. So I'm just going to dive in to the 5 questions. I guess, but first I'll say I know that there are a lot of really important topics in this book, and we're definitely going to talk about that. But first I want to start with something kind of light and fluffy, and that is baking. I know that Zoe, the main character, loves baking, and so I'm curious, are you a baker, and how did you decide to include that element into your book?
So I am not too much of a baker. I will bake every once in a while sometime. It's not too frequent. I think I did a little bit more during the early days of the pandemic, like a lot of people did. But I actually decided to make her a baker because I am obsessed with watching those baking competition shows that are all over the place now. So one that I really love is the Food Network's Kid Baking Championship show, and pretty much all of those Food Network baking competition shows, but especially the ones with the kids, because I just love that they are competing. They're so talented at baking and so, confident up there. And I just thought they were so inspiring. So I thought it'd be cool to have a kid, have Zoe be like one of those kids. But yeah, there's so many of those baking shows. I love watching them. And even though I don't bake a ton myself, I feel like I learned so much about baking from watching these shows because, of course, by the time they get to the judging table, the judge will tell them what they did right, what they did wrong. And if you just pay attention, you kind of get some tips along the way. So I did some additional research, but yeah, I was able to kind of learn a lot through watching a lot of those shows.
That is awesome. Whenever I watch those shows, I just end up wanting to make frosting and just eating all the frosting. And actually, in my hometown, we had someone who was on those holiday baking championship
Oh, really?
shows.
Oh, I love those. Yeah, they're so fun.
Yeah, easy to get sucked into and lose some hours.
Yeah, and they have them multiple times a year. So I just anytime I'm always just oh, when's the next season of the next one gonna come on? It's awesome.
Yes, I love it, love it. And I thought it made for a really fun part of your storyline too. So I think that other people, are hooked by that, and it was a great entry point into Zoe's story.
Yeah, like you were saying, there's a lot of heavier topics in the book, so I thought it'd be nice to have something lighter, that maybe other kids could relate to, like you said, to just kind of get them excited about the story, even if some of the other stuff is a little bit harder to read about, some balance. It was nice to do that, I think. Also for me for writing it too, just to have some balance in what I was writing about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so speaking of some of those harder topics, we learn pretty quickly that Zoe's biological dad, Marcus, is in prison. And as the story goes on, we learn more about him and his journey. And Zoe discovers something called the Innocence Project, which helps people who've been wrongly convicted get their freedom back. And so I'm curious, is the Innocence Project a real thing? And if it is, can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, it is a real thing. So when I, first was looking into this idea of wrongful convictions, when I first kind of came up with the idea of writing a story about, a character's parent who might have been wrongfully convicted, I was just looking up, try to find out more about this problem. And it immediately, just from searching around the internet, found the Innocence Project's website. And so I knew it would make sense to kind of include them in the book. They are a real organization. They have kind of two main priorities. Of course, the first one being what you just said, they help free incarcerated people who did not actually commit their crime, like they work with them to help get their cases retried and whatnot. And then they also try to do policy work too, to try to change the laws and change the policy. So hopefully this wouldn't happen so often. So yeah, they just had so many interesting, details on their website and lots of case studies, like cases that they've worked on. And so that was really helpful in trying to figure out what Marcus's case should be about. So yeah, they're definitely a real organization. So if any reader is curious about them, you could just go to innocenceproject.org and find out more.
Yeah, and I will make sure to link that in the description box of the video, so it's real easy for people to find that. And just really cool that you can take two things that really do exist in the real world and use a fiction story to introduce people to them. That is one of the really great things about books.
Yeah.
In your author's note, at the end of the story, you mentioned that this story took a long time to write and to find the world. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about your publication journey, or like the journey of this story.
Yeah, so this was actually the fourth manuscript that I ever wrote, though it was the first book to actually become published. So I had written 3 other books before this. Many years before, I also got a master's in creative writing from the New School. So I, had been trying to publish books for many years before I finally came up with the idea for From the Desk of Zoe Washington. It was just a lot of like putting different things out there, them not working out ultimately, and then just trying something new. So I definitely like to tell kids, that perseverance does pay off. If if you're trying to reach a goal, if it takes a long time, it's okay, because it definitely took a long time for me, but eventually did, work out. So at one point I finally, I was putting one other book, aside that was not working out, and was like, I came up with this idea. And I would say in terms of the process, this actually was the easier, things just kind of took a turn once I came up with this idea, essentially. Like the book still took some time to write. I think I wrote it, the first draft, in a few months, and then I spent like a year or more revising it. But when I did finally send it out to literary agents, which is the first step to get traditionally published, you have to kind of be agented. I immediately got, interest from agents. So it was just such a turnaround from those previous books that I tried to get published. And then when my agent went and sent it out to the publishers, because that's kind of their job to send it out to the publishers, I had multiple publishers who were interested in it. So it was a complete turnaround, and the process actually felt like it went really smoothly, but it was after years of trying with other books, it did not go smoothly at all. So it was kind of, a nice turn of events that was very exciting.
Yeah, so just keep going. Just keep going. On your website, I read a little bit about your bio, and it said that you have always loved writing, that you've been, you were always writing as a kid, always reading as a kid, and now you are an author. In addition to that advice of like, just keep going, do you have any other tips for young writers?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I didn't know as a young kid that I wanted to be a writer, but I always just liked writing for fun. So first and foremost, just write whatever is fun for you. You don't necessarily have to feel like you have to write a whole book unless you have some great idea and you want to do that. I mean, just write short stories or journal entries or letters, whatever just gets you writing. All that practice writing you're doing will eventually prepare you if down the road you want to write a whole novel. And read as much as you can too, because even as a writer now, even as a published author, I still need to read a lot in order to keep being a better writer, because you learn so much from other stories that have been published. It's just like I learned different things. Like, for example, a book that I'm working on that's going to come out later has dual point of view, so multiple points of view. And so like I might read a bunch of books that have that to try to like see how other authors did it. And that's kind of how you learn. If there's something that you're interested in writing, you can read other books or stories that are similar just to try to see like, how did they do it? How can I learn from this? So definitely reading a lot. And I think the other thing that is super important, two other things, I guess. So number one, when you do decide to write something, whether it's a story or you're going to try to attempt a book, try to get to the end, because it's always so hard. Sometimes it's so easy to just start from the beginning, you get really excited, and then you kind of, you lose steam. And of course, if you're not interested in the story anymore, by all means, put it aside. But if you really still feel good about it, even when it gets hard, just keep trying to finish it. First drafts, it's okay if it's a messy first draft, just get it down, because I think when you finally get to the end of a project, you can see it as a whole thing. And it really, first of all, you'll feel that sense of accomplishment. And then of course, like that's when you can make it better. That's when you can really make it better. And then that ties into my next comment, which is at some point, find people, whether it's classmates or teachers or maybe a writing group, who can read your work for you and give you feedback, because being able to take feedback is such a big part of being an author. I get feedback now from my editor, but I used to get feedback from critique group partners that I had, just other writers that we would, swap pages with each other. And all of their notes are what helped me make my books better, So again, like revision to me is where the magic happens. I feel like that first draft, you're just getting the story down, but revision is where you really make the story really great. So so essentially I think those are my main tips, but yeah, definitely, keep going, keep writing if you're interested in this, and just have fun with it. It's meant to be fun.
Those are such good tips. And maybe people who are listening, if you don't have a writing club, maybe this is kind of your hint to start one. If other people in the room are like sitting up and pricking their ears and like, ooh, that sounds good. Like find those people and get something started if you don't have one already. The sequel to this book came out this week as we're recording it. And I don't know. Yay.
This is the advanced copy, but yeah.
On air with Zoe Washington. And I don't know that we can talk too much about it without giving some spoilers to the end of this book. And I don't want to do that. But I am wondering if you always knew or hoped there would be a sequel. And also if writing the sequel felt different than writing the first book.
Yeah, so I did not think that there would be a sequel. I did not intend to write a sequel when I wrote the first book. And even when we were publishing the first book, I really did think that that was going to be it. Readers who get to the end of From the Desk of Zoe Washington will see that there's an epilogue. And in that epilogue, I really felt like I tied things up so that a sequel wasn't really necessary. But then I started doing school visits, after the book came out, and just getting a chance to meet readers. And that was one of their number one questions. Will there be a sequel? Will there be a sequel? I was getting asked pretty much every single time I was with a group of kids who had read the book. And, at first I said, no, I really feel like it gets wrapped up at the end. I don't really think I'm going to write one. But the more they asked, the more I started thinking about it and realized it really just took me kind of figuring out what the sequel could be. At first I was like, well, what would it be? I don't want to, it's just really hard to know what to include in a sequel sometimes. And so once I kind of thought about it more and I was able to come up with a story I was excited about, and I talked to my editor about it, then I was like, okay, I think that this actually could work. And then I was excited to do it. So yeah, it really was because readers kept telling me that they'd want to read one that kind of inspired me to write one. So I definitely dedicated this new book to my readers of the first one, because yeah, without them, I wouldn't be even able to even do a sequel. So, and then as for writing it, I would say it was it was kind of like returning to something familiar. So that was nice. The book that I wrote before that, which is my second novel, was writing something totally new. And that was so much harder. So for this, it was like, oh, I already know a lot of these characters. I already know the setting. Like I brought in a lot of the same characters with some new ones too. And so I felt like it was just kind of returning to a familiar place. I think it was still challenging. But I really had a lot of fun with it. I just feel like it was a lot of fun to go back to and write. So I would say both books were equally fun to write. I think it was probably a little easier to write the second one because I already had kind of established a lot of things from the first one. So in some ways, I do think it was a little easier. But I think both books, writing them was a joy for me. I really loved it.
That's awesome. And so, see, readers, it is really important to reach out and talk to your favorite authors and let them know what you think. And in that vein, as we wrap up here, if readers want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so if they go to my website, janaemarks.com, there is a contact me page that has my email address. They of course, if anybody does happen to be on social media, though I know most kids this age aren't, but if their parents are, or if they happen to have like a parent run account or something, they could always follow me on social media on Instagram or Twitter. And then just quickly, if you're on my website too, don't check out the book extras tab of the books page, because there's some extra content for Zoe Washington, including a playlist and a recipe that I won't spoil, but it's the recipe that she makes in the first book. So if you want to make that for yourself, you can make them. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. I hope you enjoyed hearing the first chapter and that you feel inspired to pick it up and read the rest.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time and for all of these great stories. We look forward to picking up the sequel. You want to hold it up for us one more time so we get the title of that?
This is what it looks like on air with Zoe Washington.
Perfect. And I will make sure to include that link in the description box as well. Thank you so much, Janae. Everybody, happy reading, and we'll see you again next time for another First Chapter Friday video.
Okay, bye.
To continue reading from the desk of Zoe Washington, pick up a copy from your school library, purchase one from a local indie bookstore, or grab it via the link in the description box. Then be sure to check out the rest of the First Chapter Friday videos and author interviews I have waiting for you. This week's mystery quote says, "There's always hope, but that doesn't mean it's enough to make change." Thanks so much for joining me on my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd. I hope you'll come back again for more First Chapter Friday videos, brain breaks, and other great content. You can find me online at these places, which I've linked below. See you again next time, and happy reading.